Our next panel is sure to excite, as many of you have already inquired in the chat online in our virtual, asking about real use cases for generative AI. I'd like to introduce our moderator for the upcoming panel, Jimi Shanahan, Director of AI Solutions Hub here at the Institute for Experiential AI. He'll introduce our fellow panelists speaking on enterprise-level use cases for generative AI. Jimi.
Thank you, Groom. And welcome, everybody, to Boston. If you're from out of town, it's great to see so many people here and to see so much interest in AI. And I must say, it wasn't always like this. When I started working in AI 30 years ago, nobody even knew what AI was. But these days, it seems to be on the tip of everybody's tongue. So it's great to be here and have these wonderful panelists with us today. And before I get into the meat of the panel discussion here, I want to introduce our speakers. So we have a wonderful lineup here. So first of all, we have Manish Worlikar. And Manish heads up the Center of Excellence for AI and Advanced Analytics at Fidelity Institutional. And he is an industry-leading AI practitioner focused on pragmatic applications of latest advances and innovation in AI technology. What that means is that he's on the bleeding edge. He and his teams are embracing Gen AI. And they're doing that to understand their customers better and to improve and simplify the customer experience, and most importantly, to drive business value and efficiencies. Next up, we have Lazarevic. And he is no stranger to AI and data science, and he's a senior consulting partner at Sigmoid Analytics. And he is an award-winning data analytics executive with extensive experience in applying innovative AI and data science in various industries ranging from CPG and healthcare to finance and insurance. And his unique combination of technical expertise, strategic thinking, and visionary leadership has enabled him to drive over $600 million of value for various organizations over the last few years. So then we have Jay Schuren, and he is the Chief Customer Officer at GM Generative AI. And he works closely with an organization called DataRobot. And he is responsible for leading the technical field teams and has developed and deployed thousands of AI and machine learning pipelines with a variety of customers. Presently, Jay is leading a cross-functional initiative aimed at closing the confidence gap with Gen AI. And we'll talk about confidence later in this panel discussion. So to balance things out, we have an academic in the house, and that is Professor Byron Wallace. And he's going to keep us honest. And so Byron is a director for the data science program, and he's also the Cy and Laurie Sternberg interdisciplinary associate professor here at Khoury College of Computer Sciences, Northeastern. So as part of this faculty at NU, Byron is also engaged in extensive research in NLP and its applications to healthcare, and he is an active faculty member of the EAI Institute. So welcome once again, and thank you for making time for us today. So as you know, one of the pillars of education at Northeastern is that of experiential learning. And what that means is that we're not about learning in theory, but we're about putting the rubber to the road. And that is very much in the spirit of today's panel, where we explore how Gen AI is generating business value or not for corporate America. This hopefully dovetails nicely with some of the exciting examples that we've seen so far today from Dan at Chegg, Ashok at Intuit, and so on. So 2023 has been a breakout year for AI, and in particular for Gen AI. And in this panel, we want to hear about the glorious successes, the challenges, and even the failures when it comes to putting Gen AI to work inside corporate America, whether it's for the B2B or B2C context. So before again, I just want to say something on a personal note here. I love looking at and using applications of Gen AI, such as generating a lecture on how to be a data scientist on the fly by prompt engineering, to debugging code, to generating a logo for a local tennis competition. Last night, I got a Lyft ride from here to my hotel. The Lyft driver puts his Tesla into autopilot mode, takes his hand off the steering, and 7 minutes later, I'm home, back to my hotel. So AI is really hitting the road here. So I also love getting down the weeds of Gen AI, be it coding the pipelines, loss functions, architectures, and leveraging the patterns for using these Gen AI models and associated frameworks. At the Institute here, I have a player-coach role where I lead a team of engineers and scientists. I love looking at the imperfections of AI. Gen AI makes me want to be a better scientist and practitioner. I recognize the flaws, as many of you do, such as the pale male data problem that is prominent in image generation, the weaknesses such as the lack of a world model, and also the opportunities. So in my role here as Director of AI Solutions Hub at Northeastern, I get a lot of questions from business partners, such as, and you've heard this before, will AI take my job? What is this AI thing? Is it really important for me to know what it is? How could we use AI? What would AI, or would AI generate business value for my organization? Should we build? Should we buy? And many more questions when we get down into the weeds of AI and Gen AI. So I thought a great way to structure our time here today was to leverage some of these questions and have our panelists address some of them and enlighten us. So without further ado, let's get into the core of today's panel discussion. So I've got a number of questions here, and I'm going to have the practitioners give their perspectives, and then I'm going to have Byron counter or challenge some of those. So the first question, and I'll start here with Manish, if that's okay. Can you provide an example of a use case or use cases that are either very successful or were aborted or did not perform as expected, and why at Fidelity Institutional?
Sure. Right. Thank you for asking. So what we have seen, the theme of use cases on a successful side is where we have human AI partnership, where human is in the loop, specifically human is in the driving seat, right? So basically the goal is to improve the efficiency of and productivity of our associates. So for example, I'll give you a simple but a real use case in Gen AI, where we have a lot of rich content in Fidelity, and one of the goal is to generate question answer pairs out of that content. Think of like creating an FAQ, right? So initially before Gen AI's thing, our associates were manually creating question answer pairs, and then due to regulatory concerns, we have restrictions. We have to manually review each and every word that is generated, right? So there's a question answer generating and then reviewing. With LLMs now, what we do is the models are creating question answer pairs, and then our associates are reviewing and editing as required. So that's helping them scale and accelerate their work. So that's increasing productivity, and they are loving it. So that's successful theme. You also asked me about what did not work, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. And this is like pre-generative AI thing, but it is the principles are application to even Gen AI. So we had a use case where we were predicting an anomaly, and it was a client-facing use case where we are in a B2B framework where our predictions were consumed by our clients. So one of the use cases which I'm talking about, we had like a sophisticated model, all the best practices, data scientists were happy, everything was good. What we missed is like understand the effort required from our client side to consume these sophisticated insights, act on it, and very important, how to measure the impact of the delivered insights. So that was very critical point. So that's why lessons learned, we have now basically have a very rigorous input process for every use case, including prototypes, where we look from multiple dimensions. And these all things, like it's not about generating a cool model or best practice. It's all about who will consume it, how, and how will you measure the impact. So that's the lessons learned.
Great. So it just seems that these are, I guess, lessons you could learn using any technology.
Yes.
Know your customer, listen to your customer, and make sure you don't burden your customer with high expectations.
And have a framework to measure the impact, because the senior manager always looking for what's the impact, right, to be quantitative.
Great. Thank you, Manish. So Jay, same question to you. Want to know about success, failure, and why? Oh, sorry, not Jay, but sorry, Alex. Sorry.
Oh. Okay, I was actually planning to talk about a similar example that Manish was saying, but right now I have to switch to another one. So, providing assistance to customer service representative was definitely one successful application that we have. However, we also did another successful application that actually took a lot of customer reviews and automatically discover all the topics through topic modeling and transformer models for what customers liked and what customers disliked about products. We actually automatically provided this information to our business partners, and we used this information along the product description and image to provide like a product content generation. That worked really well, especially because we integrated some of this into the dashboard that people or business partners using successfully. On the unsuccessful part, actually we had an attempt to actually provide a know-it-all tool to help executives to answer questions that would typically require like 7 to 14 days. And the reason for failure for that, because the data that we had, it was not ready. The metadata, we didn't have enough time to prepare this. And that leads me to actually the final kind of conclusion that in order to actually successfully apply some of these generative AI applications is to definitely have a human in the loop that will verify the outcome of the algorithm, to have the good data quality, and also be able to generate or quantify the value of your program.
Great. Thank you very much. So Jay, sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, at DataRobot, we're much more on the enterprise analytics side. So we have a lot of customers using these solutions today. So I get firsthand experience of working with them to try to stand up their first prototype, get it into production, see what works and what doesn't. The pattern that we see working most frequently is called RAG. It's Retrieval Augmented Generation, where they store some of their data in a vector database. They map the question in, pull that back like a cheat sheet, and then ask the language model, answer the question, but stick to the script. That works really well. So that solves question answer problems incredibly well. Where that falls down, the language models are very good at providing a conversational response, but they're terrible at basic math, and there's some work around providing the ability to give it tools to answer questions, but you ask it to go and pull 2 earnings reports, calculate a % change, it's going to lie to you. So trying to figure out which type of use case you want to address. And then the far extreme, which I see, this is actually an enterprise risk right now, is definitely I'm trying to think of a nice way to describe nerd, but I loved working on this stuff. So you give me one of these problems, I just want to work on it. And right now we're seeing in enterprises, everybody wants to build agents that do incredibly cool things. And for those who haven't used it, an agent is basically like asking the language model an open-ended question, having it structure that, and then work through various steps. The challenge is often they go awry through that process, and it's really an interesting area of research. But if you need to have an application in production by the end of the week, you will spend your whole week be very happy, but your management will not be very happy. And so that's one of the things that we're seeing.
Great. So Byron, just to round things out here, are these organizations being ambitious enough, or do they have the tools to be ambitious enough? And where can academics like yourselves and others help to kind of push the frontier?
I see. Yeah, so I guess as the token academic, let's see. I guess what I would say is I feel like we're in an era where there is just, maybe people are a little, like I'm a long-time NLP person, so I've been in NLP for a while. And it's really cool that we can do a bunch of stuff all of a sudden. That's very exciting. You do get the feeling that maybe there's like a little bit of a backwards mentality where people are like, how can I use the LLMs or whatever, instead of like, what are my actual problems, right? And maybe this gets a little bit to the excitement aspect, which is, I understand, they're fun. But like as an anecdote, I like to tell, it was like I had a PhD student, very smart person, and but very young, and we were like trying to run a regression, right, for something, and they were like, oh, should I use an LLM for this? And I'm like, no, what, like, but this is like a totally reasonable suggestion. So I sort of get the feeling that, in business, maybe it's a little bit, of course, I don't know because I'm not in business, but my sense is that maybe there's a little bit of that mentality of like every problem, we can solve it with like LLMs or something. It's like, I don't know, probably, maybe you can. Like you can get these models to do lots of things, but I don't know that it's always the right tool. So that would be my kind of high-level thing. Of course, I can't speak to the degree to which that's actually happening, but if I were asked, I think there's maybe a little bit too much of a rush to just use them because they're cool. And they are cool, but I mean, we have regression is still pretty good.
We're still in the honeymoon phase.
That's right.
So just building on this, these responses here, Jay in particular, we are about 11 months into the Gen AI honeymoon here, and there seems to be a huge confidence problem with Gen AI, meaning that there's a lack of confidence about building Gen AI solutions that you trust will work and drive value in production. So what can be done to solve this generative AI confidence gap?
This is actually the area that I spend the most time thinking about. It's with customers trying to build applications and then leverage them directly or give them to their clients. There's so many risks that can go into it. Like, what's the potential risk to your reputation? There was a news story not too long ago about a grocery store that recommended a recipe that happened to be poisonous. Technically, it is a recipe, though it shouldn't be given to people. And so these type of things happen. And so when we think about confidence, right now we've been breaking it down into 5 dimensions. The first is around cost. I don't know if you saw the story about the video game company that made the quality of the chat experience much better using GPT-4, but the first month of turning it on cost $200,000. So that aspect CIOs are very concerned about. So thinking about what's the right language model and the right environment to run it to get the value you want without having to bill. The second is the correctness. The language models can hallucinate, and if you don't have good content, they tend not to answer well. And so most of the time when we're improving these models, it's actually going back to the original source content. Like, there's just not good documentation for this phenomena we're asking questions about. So we're recognizing when that's happening. And then the third is like not getting locked in. Like right now, there's so much advancement and there's so much emphasis on this space. Like thinking about how do you work with an open framework so you can take in the best components as you go.
Great, thanks, Jay. So another question we get is, well, this Gen AI is awesome, and I'm a software engineer, I'm a data scientist. Are there some common patterns that we can learn and use in practice? And so in that spirit, in your organization, what patterns are you adopting to make Gen AI ready as you jump from prototype to product? For example, are you using prompt engineering? Are you using retrieval augmented generation or RAG, Flare, chain of thought, React, prompt optimization? So for the industrialists here, the practitioners, briefly describe a pattern that your organization commonly uses and outline some use cases or case studies and results if possible. So Manish.
Sure, thank you. Your question is multi-dimensional, right? One is the patterns we use. Second is from prototype to prod, right? So when with generative AI, we started developing prototypes initially to understand all the foundational capabilities that we need internally as well as for our clients. For example, summarization, question answering, email drafting, so those kind of things we started working on. And the one you mentioned about patterns, right? What has prompt engine is very common, everyone knows about it. It's the art of asking questions and how to ask question is critical. The knowledge is packed in that model. How do you squeeze the juice and get it out, right? So that's one. And a second is about, you mentioned RAG, right? RAG. So we use RAG, retrieval augmented generation. It's just nothing but how you said, it's like a cheat sheet to the model. it kind of helps reduce hallucination, right? You are giving a model exactly, answer me from this specific content the question. So this helps hallucination. So that's technical and architectural lens that we are talking about. And there are advances even in the RAG, right? What cheat sheet, how do you even rank those cheat sheet answers to the model? But then there's a lot more thing happening in the industry to take a prototype to production. For example, we are a regulated industry, so we have to take legal, risk, compliance, data governance under account to ensure that we are protecting our customer data. We have to, in production, as you mentioned, we have to ensure, okay, what is the latency of the model? What's the cost of the model? What's the explainability? Can we explain the outputs? Like RAG in some way at least helps you. So it tells you where the answer came from. What are the sources of the data that the model used to generate the answer? At least it gives you some level of explainability rather than complete black box. So that's my answer.
That's a great response. And I think Byron is like thinking, we need to work harder and provide support to these guys.
Well, I think like calling it prompt engineering has always been a little bit of a misnomer, right? It's like prompt hacking or like, I don't know, incantation orchestration or something would be. I'm not sure, but it's a very strange thing. We have some recent research that was actually led by an undergraduate here at Northeastern, Schuren, and it's like, okay, what if you collect for a number of tasks that you want language models to do, and you collect from people that are NLP researchers appropriate instructions, like how they would write them for the same task. So you get like 20 different ways of asking a model to answer a particular question. All are appropriate semantically. You end up getting huge variance in terms of the performance that you get as a result, right? So it's hard for me to imagine situations where it's like a responsible thing to do to deploy models that have this kind of a variance with respect to inputs that are appropriate kind of requests for a given task. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a very delicate thing, and I think the fact that we're relying on sort of getting the magic spell right to get the model to produce the outputs that we want is maybe not a great sign. The fact that prompt engineering as a term exists, I think, is like a failure of NLP.
Right? Okay, all right. You're getting the audience riled up here. Calm down.
Listen.
All right. Let's come back to the real world for a moment. Alec, maybe can you give us a take on the patterns and use cases and maybe results even?
Sure. So similar to Manish, most of the employees are mostly familiar with prompt engineering, although we recently started to experiment with RAG as well, and also the length chain, which is another form of the chain of thought. It actually provides a framework that will actually allow you to working with large language model and to quickly develop some of this without actually getting stuck into a lot of low-level complexities. But we use this mostly to verify the outcome of some of the of the algorithms that we have and the correctness of this. We, again, figure out that the human in the loop is the key aspect in developing this, and we didn't feel comfortable that we immediately give this kind of algorithm immediately to our customers to play with this, just for the reason that the correctness is not there and the accuracy of our models is not there for various reasons, like a data quality, data bias, data security, and so on.
Got it. Great. Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So, Jay, how about you on your side?
Yeah, I love to follow up. I think incantation is a much better term. I like that. What we're seeing in the wild with customers is instead of asking everyone to cast their own spells and hoping it works, you can look at use case by use case and then embed some good logic with that RAG pipeline to keep it on script, but also in the right context. And eventually, you've constrained it enough that it's consistently answering well. And then for when it really matters, we use these internally as an enablement tool all the time where our field team can ask a question in Slack, which is just a chat interface for those who don't use it, and basically get the response. And then we use predictive models to say, for answering this technical type of question, we have a traditional predictive model that scores what's the probability this answer is sound. And then that gives you, if it's 10%, probably ask somebody else. If it's 90%, it's seen it before, it could detect that pattern, it feels pretty confident. That's one way we've been successful in getting more adoption of the tools.
Great, great. So I guess I was talking to Tanay, he's a PhD student from MIT earlier today. I think he's here. He's doing his PhD and he's starting a company. So that's the new standard for getting a PhD, I guess. So anyway, we were just talking about prompt optimization. And it's a new development in the field. And it's a great addition to the field. It's a new tool. And earlier this year, a group from CMU, they hacked a language model to generate all sorts of crazy stuff by using this tool. And so they circumvented commercial models like ChatGPT, Claude, Bard, Llama 2, without having direct access to them. And so this attack used this new capability, and no doubt it's very useful, but also it can be used adversarially. So I guess, how do we innovate and generate possibilities and also avoid getting in trouble? I guess, are there ways to safeguard progress? Maybe Byron, do you want to put you on the spot there?
I don't know. Like, I think, okay, I guess what I would say about that line of work, I think it's really interesting. And you can do fun things with all these models and tell them to disregard the above, and now you're going to do my evil biddings or whatever. And there's all these sort of hacks you can do, and you get by the sort of safety guards that have been put there either explicitly or implicitly via RLHF. I guess. To me, that actually isn't, that's very interesting work. And I think I guess I'm not totally convinced about the practical risks of that particular variety of attack. I'm much more concerned about people using these models in a more prosaic fashion rather than people that are actively trying to hack them. I guess the envisioned concern there is that this would then allow somebody to generate bespoke misinformation or something like that in a way that the model would otherwise prevent them from doing. But maybe. But I think that somebody that has the wherewithal to do that probably it also has the wherewithal to, get a language model that doesn't require API access or whatever. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I guess I'm not totally. I think it's a really interesting line of research. I'm less convinced that it's like the practical threat that at least I'm most concerned about personally.
Yeah, I think it's a very fascinating development, and no doubt, like Dan from Chegg this morning, you sleep like a baby every night. But these guys here, I'm sure don't. So I'm just wondering, what keeps you awake at night as we head into this new frontier? So maybe Manish, you can lead off.
Yes. So during the day, me and my team, we are working on putting the best practices, the guardrails into place to ensure that we provide some business appropriate output from these models. What keeps me awake, one reason is a fear that, okay, what if we kind of provide output or to something which is not business appropriate, which is biased or wrong answers to our customers, right? So that is something which is on my mind. It has been time that I have woken up. But then what we have done is that we have taken a stand right now to focus on all LLM Gen AI use cases on internal facing associates. So we are trying to understand this nascent technology well, understand the guardrails before we kind of open it out to our customers. So that's one. Second one is we also know that these large language models are also getting updated regularly. In papers we have seen that, okay, the performance is not consistent. So that's another fear that I have, that, okay, how can we confirm, how can we provide consistent outputs from our models to our customers? Right, so those two things are kind of on top of my head, and one I would like to give an simple analogy. Right, for us, it's like a pilot's taking off flight. Before that, they do all the checks, then they take off. Not like car where you turn on the car, put on a drive, and move. Right, so that's how we approach it.
So a question for you. Are your planes carrying passengers these days, or are they just test pilots only?
Test pilots, internal associates.
Okay.
We want to ensure that we feel comfortable, it's safe, trusted, before we open it up directly to our external customers.
Great. Alex, you want to share some?
Similar to Manish, I think what really keeps me, from the organizational perspective, what keeps me awake at night is really making sure that we provide the accurate, reliable outcome to our the customers, our clients, our partners, but also that we actually do not spend too much money, that the infrastructure cost is not exploding, and also making sure that we have appropriate data quality that is supporting all in this. And having in mind that we are generating actually the business impact. Because very often, most of these Gen AI applications are created just for the fear of missing out because people wanted to do. Very often, they fail to generate the value. From the really broader perspective, what keeps me awake at night, I really worry about the bad actors. We heard some of these stories this morning that they will misuse this technology because this is powerful technology. And we actually just had the Gartner talk 2 days ago. There was an example during the talk how you can actually steal the credit card information using the ChatGPT, which was amazing. But also from another perspective, I know that with the increase of the digital exposure that we have and our exposure to this technology and generative AI, I think our isolation is increasing and our mental health problems in the country are increasing as well. And I worry really how all this digital exposure and reliance on social media will actually impact the social interaction we have as human beings, and also how this would impact the mental health as well.
I think it's a great point. And here at Northeastern, we have, I think Annika is here. She's looking at mental health and in the context of large language models as well. So Jay, I know that you have something to say to us here.
I think I'll answer from two perspectives. One from an enterprise organization, and then one as just an individual and what I would be worried about at night. So for organizations in business, like right now, I'm very concerned when someone tells me they want to take their proprietary data and put it in a large language model and like train a model using that information, because then all of the tricks you're referring to exposes all of that information. And it's absolutely not needed. Like RAG, you can have rule-based access controls, and all the same ways you keep your data away from other people work. So that's one thing in an enterprise. Whenever they're like, oh, we're building our own language model, and I'm like, really concerned. Like it's just going to lead to a bad outcome. Personally, I worry a lot about the security and fraud, and like having aging parents. Like you worry, like it's enough to look at the local paper, see a news story, be like, hey, I met you here. I need this info, and the ability to automate simple news scraping with a speech that can be executed quickly in a text message, that kind of stuff scares me a lot, because I don't think we have like the support network for our friends and family to help them through those situations. That part's scary.
Okay, great. Byron, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Since you're the token academic here.
That's right.
So what is the impact of Gen AI on the educational system, both from a teaching and from a student perspective, and also from an assessment perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, but I guess from my view, I think it'll be a gradual shift. I mean, I think, on the one hand, obviously, I don't think that we should pretend that these technologies don't exist, and folks will be using them as they go forward. So, I don't think the right thing to do is to be like, you can't use, generative technologies to help you with your homeworks ever, or what have you. But I do think just like, writing aids are really only going to be useful if you have a certain level of mastery of the language in which you're writing. Similarly, I think, for example, for programming, like getting, using like Copilot or something, it's pretty much only as good as you are, at being sort of fluent in programming, I suppose. And so I think that's the kind of angle, the perspective that I try to keep. And in terms of assessment, yeah, it complicates things somewhat. I don't know what to do about that. I think you really can't reliably tell when an assignment has been derived, let's say, from generative AI. At least at the moment. And so I'm not sure what we should do about that, to be honest. I think what we shouldn't do is, ignore the technology. And I think we should try to encourage a culture in which it is embraced, but in an academically honest way. That's the best I can say. And how best to realize that is something that I think we'll be continuing to kind of hash out here at Northeastern.
So what I'm hearing is it's an open research problem.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You want students to come to help you solve this?
Oh, no, I'm not sure about that. Maybe. I don't know that it's not necessarily, it's certainly not a technical research question. I think it's maybe what we really need are sort of experts in education to work with us and whatnot.
Alex,
I would like to chime in. I think initially many academic institutions initially ignore the ChatGPT and generative AI and even block some of this. I think this technology has enormous potential to disrupt and change the education. And I believe we are probably in position to actually provide more like personalized training, personalized learning for people. I think what Khan Academy is doing, they have a program, I believe, Kamigo. They provide students actually to learn through interaction. And I think this is the way how we should actually change our education to provide more options to leverage this technology rather than just to block it.
Okay, I think that sounds wise. All right, so I have other questions, but I want to go to the audience here and give an opportunity for folks. So we have microphones. Usama's here. I saw his hand first because he was closest. There are many. So can you raise your hand again so we can get?
Yes.
Yeah. There.
Okay. I'm going to start with someone else, actually. Go ahead. So we have a number of questions online as well, so try and keep it brief if possible.
Thank you. Hi, thank you everyone for your beautiful insights, very interesting. I wanted to pick up on the comment about the assessment in terms of how we're going to use these technologies or how we could use them in a constructive way. I think we should be thinking about the lines of having the technologies help the students prepare for their assignments, but then deliver live, deliver in persons, going kind of backwards to where we have teaching tables and they had to deliver and produce their knowledge and their reasoning live. So I think that could help us. I don't know what you think about that.
I personally, I like that in many ways, philosophically. So I think the risk there, at least from my perspective, is, certain people might not necessarily operate well in that sort of setup, and it's also not necessarily reflective of what you're actually going to do in practice. So what you're measuring then is somebody's ability to perform in a kind of, a somewhat artificial situation where there's time pressure and they're sort of on the spot. And maybe that's okay. But it is a trade-off, right? Because in practice, that's not necessary. I don't know how good of a measure that is of somebody's ability to contribute in a particular role or whatever it is that we're actually trying to measure. So it's a proxy, and I'm just not totally sure how good of a proxy it is. It does, of course, mitigate some of the issues you might have about, is this person just using ChatGPT or whatever. So I don't know. I'm sympathetic to that, but I feel like I'm not sort of confident about. I have kind of mixed feelings about that for that reason. I don't know if others.
So I think the idea of an in-person interview is always good, whether it's academic or in the classroom. To assess.
Yesterday I was watching a video, Avatar, they call me Billy. So now it's right now it's text interface. Soon you will have avatars talking to you, right? Digital experience. But then I understand it's human versus technology, but it's getting close.
Great.
Some people like to learn from the favorite people, right? They can create their avatars and learn from them any language or any topic they want to learn.
All right, thank you, Billy. So next question, yeah.
Hi, Mo Morales, UX Director. I have a question for you related to what we were just talking about. I think I might exclude the academic perspective because I think it's been addressed a little bit. But I challenge our business folks. Do you think that there's a use case for Gen AI detection?
What do you mean Gen AI detection?
So detecting AI.
Yes.
Detecting if the content has been generated by AI.
I think in fraud, absolutely. It's a major concern, whether it's, think about how you verify your bank account or something. Even if they call you as Whisper and these type technologies become better and better, the ability to mimic, even how would you know if it's your loved one over a phone call? It's a crazy, the evolution there is, and security is a really important topic.
I think some people are trying to add the watermarking technology to address this, especially for the text and images, but for the voice is a little bit tougher.
We'll get to two-factor auth for talking to your grandparents.
In corporations, we have some voice authentication, right? So that definitely we need to understand, okay, how is there a machine behind it or a human behind the voice?
Yeah.
So
But from a consumer perspective, though, sometimes I'm wondering, it might help you in your business to protect your consumer or your customers who are engaged in financial transactions. But maybe what about me hiring a new person and wondering whether or not that person actually can write as well as, like a content producer or something? How do I know whether they're...
I think the in-person conversation is probably the way to get around some of these, for the moment at least. Okay, I think there was another question here.
Yes,
Yeah,
we have. And I
then
do want to
more.
take one from our virtual attendees as well.
Thank you, Drew.
This is in from Ray, and it's for the panel, but I will start with you, Jay. What percentage of your general AI projects are actually going into production? And after you've all had a quick chance to chime in, Byron, is this wasteful? Where should they be focusing their time?
All right.
So
Just got interesting, I think.
yeah, when we look at it, if we break it up into the internal assistants, almost all of them. The barrier, like especially with RAG, if you give the citations, it's a step above Google, and the risk is so low. All of those go.
Yeah.
If you're doing your customer-facing ones, the barrier is higher, and there to get good results, you have to keep the scope limited. Don't try to build something to answer all questions about all things, but if it's really tightly scoped, even if you have a model above many tightly scoped models that say, go to A, B, C, or other and say we can't do that, that pattern works. And I tried to convince everyone to do that, and if they do, it goes to production. If they try to build one model to rule them all, it does not ever get there.
Great. Thank you, Jay. We have one more question here. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Harrison Leon from the Block Center at Carnegie Mellon. Enlightening discussion. Thank you so much for your participation. I totally agree. Humans definitely need to be in the loop, but sometimes it's not robust enough if the users are not well informed. So I wanted to know from an industry perspective, how do you guys close the gap from your developers to the end users? Right? Sometimes they need to have additional information to understand in full context what that output is and how to properly deploy it or use that information. So what sort of measures or practices are you putting in place to inform those users?
I guess, Manish, you kind of talked to this a bit earlier.
Yes, yes.
I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to add to what you said earlier.
So basically, what you said is exactly what we faced in one of the use cases, right? So we want users to understand what exactly are they consuming, why, understand the importance of that insights. But they also need to understand what action they should be taking on that. Do they have appropriate checkpoints to say, okay, what actions am I taking on this, and then measuring the value. So what you said is exactly what we have to follow, use case by use case, based on what type of insight has been served.
Great. Any other perspectives from the panelists here?
We have found that the system design of, again, if your problem's scoped tightly, you can use a generative to create the response, and then have a team of experts, like whoever was answering those questions before, just grade them and then build a predictive model on those grades. If it's a team of 10, it takes an afternoon, you provide pizza, and now you have a good predictive model to say the probability this answer is correct is high or not. That's worked pretty well. And then also adding moderation up front when you see a new prompt or a new question to say, we can or can't answer this question. Because if you control what comes in and you grade what comes out, odds are better. If you let it take all questions about all things, it's going to lie.
Great, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the really interesting discussion. Do you all see much difference or uptake of agent type AI applications where like Ashok this morning was talking about Intuit Assist can take actions on your behalf already. Is that something that you see in your own applications, and do you see special risks for these type of uses?
We are exploring, but it's not for prime time yet.
All right, I got one question here, and back there, just on the, sorry, Groom. And online, are we okay?
We have a ton online, but we'll follow up with you guys and have those answered.
Thank you.
So my question is to Mr. Manish. In investment-related industries, valuation is a major part of the job. Do you see role of AI in that? It can help analysts in developing models quickly. And second question is, two of the big models like Google's Bard and Microsoft ChatGPT are more of a general purpose models, but the two models, Bloomberg's version of GPT and Microsoft Copilot, that is going to be launched in next month. How are they going to impact the industries?
Okay, so I'll answer your second question first, right? So OpenAI or Bard, I see this as horizontal models, foundational models. I eventually see there are two versions of it. One could be more vertical models, domain specific, they understand domain, and then eventually task-specific models, which are lighter in weight, lower in cost, and do specific task perfectly. So I see that evolution like this. It depends on what task you are wanting to do, because as one of my panelists, I think Alex said about cost, right? Foundational model, there's a lot of cost to run this ChatGPT models in production if you're passing back and forth a lot of data along with your prompts, right? So this is how I see foundational to vertical to task-specific mini models. And your first question was?
So first question was about role of ML models in valuation models.
Yes, so definitely there's a lot of public information, as well as people have specific interviews with these companies, right? So this depends on the data classification. Whatever we are able to get from public domain SEC filings, yes, that is definitely helping scale the portfolio manager to understand the companies better. Right, so we definitely have human in the loop and human in control, but this is the right application of Gen AI to in this asset management group.
All right, I think we're at time, unfortunately. We have a ton of questions, and there's lots online. I have more personal questions because I want to understand what's around the corner here in the next day or month or year. This is a fast evolving field, and we've learned a lot from your experiences today. So thank you very much for being part of the panel and sharing all your wonderful experiences and knowledge. Thank you.